So I want to start with a little experiment. Are you up for it? Okay. I would like you to think of your greatest idol. You know, that one person that you really respect and you really want to be. And I'm talking about your idol. I want you to think beyond your profession, your family, your country. Have you thought of that person? Yep. Now, I'd like you to think about the one value that that person really embodies, that you really respect and admire. What is that one amazing value? Now, a lot of people aren't sure what it could be, so I've just given you some ideas. Here's some ideas of some of the values that I've come across. It might be one of these values, it might be something else. You got that value? Okay, now, being completely honest with yourself, ask yourself how much of your life right now and who you are right now is about that one value. How much does it govern your life? Just pause to think about that. So for me, I have to tell you, I struggled with balance all my life. As a kid, values for me were fun, curiosity, excitement. Guess what it was for my parents? Study, study, study. So I struggled through school, just about passing, doing loads of other fun things. And it got to the stage where I had to go to university. And I had to choose what to do at university. What did I really want to do? What I valued was arts and entertainments. Were my parents going to agree with that? No. So I thought, engineering. They would love that, but I would absolutely die. So I had to find something that was in the middle, my balance between me and my parents. I came up with something amazing. Oceanic geography. Oceanic geography, it's a science, right? And how much fun would it be to go in a submarine under the ocean and sail the 7 seas? So I went to my dad, who was the rule maker of the house, and I said to him, Dad, I've decided what I'm doing at university. It's oceanic geography. My dad looked at me and he said, Vandana, I will say this only once. You have 3 options: doctor, lawyer, or accountant. Did you hear that noise? That was my submarine crashing to the bottom of Vandana's ocean, along with all her other discarded life choices. Not one to be outdone, resilient, I tried one last filmy dialogue with my dad. I said to my dad, I'll do whatever you want. Just give me 1 year to do whatever I want. Now, he didn't say, like in the movie, Ja, Vandana, ja, ji le apne zindagi. But he did give me that 1 year off. And during that 1 year, I did some really amazing things. I DJ'd on local radio, which was so successful because we had loads of listeners. However, the radio station went bankrupt pretty quick. So I went home and talked to my dad and told him what had happened. And he said to me, you know what he said? You know, Vandana, if you had been a chartered accountant, you could have saved that company. Checkmate. So I gave in. I did accountancy. I became a chartered accountant. And to my surprise, I found myself absolutely excelling at double-entry bookkeeping, balancing balance sheets, balancing anything that needed balance. But something didn't add up. You see, I was in the City of London, and like every single other metropolis, I would see thousands of men every day and hundreds of women looking absolutely miserable going to work, except on a Friday night or at Christmas time, when they were really happy. Why were they so miserable? And more importantly, why weren't we measuring what made them happy? So I went and spoke to my professors at university, who were all male. Most of the professors at that time were. And they told me that, Vandana, a balance sheet for a company is about everything they own and everything they owe. And the profit and loss account is how we use all of that to make money. Everything else is intangible or valueless. Even a committed, loyal, motivated workforce, without which that company wouldn't have a balance sheet and wouldn't actually exist. But the surprising thing is, over the last 20 years, I've traveled around the world, and it's exactly the same, the balance sheet rules. So in my spare time, the writer in me came out, and I started writing about alternate worlds. What could the world be like if it was different, if we changed the rules? Could we alter happiness? So I had to find the rule makers first. Who were the rule makers who governed our world? And there was one answer, and it was one syllable, and it was men. Now, the following statement is not meant to be divisive. It's based on fact. 80% of history has been written by men and about men over the last 2,000 years. 80% of religion, 80% of legislation, 80% of scientific advancement has been written by men, about men, on topics that men have found interesting or important. It's not good or bad, it's just the way it was. It's a male-dominated way. So, in my spare time, I created a world that was 80% female. And I started thinking about what would go onto their balance sheets. How would they control? How would they operate? Now, you may think that that's a really alien concept, but actually that's not true. Did you know across the world there are women tribes that are thriving very successfully? From the Mosso in China, where they have what's known as walking marriages, where the women choose their lovers, commit polygamy without stigma. There's a tribe called the Tuareg in Africa where the men cover their face, not the women, out of shame. And of course in India we have the Garo and the Khasi tribes. They inherit, the girls inherit, not the men. But we don't hear about them, perhaps because their version of power and control is different. So I wrote these stories, and to anecdotally validate some of my ideas, I did some social experiments. I asked different groups, professional men, millennial men, professional women, and children aged 13 to 14 to do two things. Firstly, to come up with their core values, what was important to them. And secondly, to say, if there was a world that was and had always been 80% female, what would the values of that world be? And I asked them specifically to look at lifestyle, education, governance, and business. I'd like you to come and take a walk with me through those worlds. Welcome to the professional women's version of this world. Now, in this world, it's extremely peaceful, it's extremely green. Women choose to live either individually or in communes. It's up to them. There's no school, the community does the teaching for the children. There is scientific advancement, but not for war, for health and exploration, because peace is the most important thing, and decreasing crime. There is a lot of gender equality. There's proportional representation for the small proportion of men. And in this world, there's a barter system where they barter material goods with emotions and values, which leads to food and shelter for everyone. The biggest business in this world, luxury spas, health and wellness. So that's the women's world. Let's move on to the millennial men's version of this world. It's very clean, this world. And it's the mums who go to work every day, looking absolutely gorgeous with their jewelry, which is made from eco-friendly mining. In this world, core values rule, so there are lower margins for profits and a huge amount of greater corporate social responsibility. In this world, there is conflict, but there's a new definition of a Cold War. It's where two countries do not talk to each other. And in this world, the millennial men believe there will be rational, practical female dictators, which in their opinion is a great thing. Gender equality, the jury's out. They're not really sure whether there would be or whether men would need reservation. Most likely, men would be at home cooking and cleaning and looking pretty miserable. According to millennial men, this is a world of fat, lazy, male sperm donors. Ouch. Okay, let's move on and look at the children's version. Let's take a peek over here. Well, in this world, there is no religion, there is no inequality, there is no gender discrimination. In fact, there are no differences, according to these kids. These kids were born and brought up in India. The one thing this place does have, though, is beautiful sanitation. Extremely important. Now, because women love to cook and feed people, there are thousands of amazing food cuisines all over the country and all over the world. And there's plenty of time to listen to amazing music and dream really big, lofty thoughts. In this world, there's no school. They're taught by the community with experiential learning. And there's a much greater emphasis on literature and much less on science. It's a barter system, again, where wellness is there for all. And a really other beautiful thing about this world is it is a world without borders, where there's less rivalry, much more freedom, and women follow rules and principles. So let's now go to the men's version. In the men's version, whilst women have gone from being hunters-snarers in exactly the same way they would have done in this world, they've grown up to trade in exactly the way we do here. Except there's one difference. We don't have huge high skyscrapers in this particular world. Why? Because women are weak, can't carry heavy weights, so all the buildings are one floor only, as you can see in front. Women look absolutely beautiful because, according to these men, women only dress for women, not for men. And fashion is huge. Cue the designer Nike heels. In this world, the women are well into self-development. In fact, obsessively so. So much so that the elderly and the children are actually abandoned and men are kept on leashes. Gender discrimination and EQ are important to the women in some places, so we do see a better emphasis of life skills with parents involved much more with the teaching of children. And at the end of the day, they do believe that there might be a need for reservation. Conflict would be there, but that's okay. It would just be handled as part of life. Now, that got me thinking in these social experiments. We got some great insights. A lot of the problems of a male-dominated world were solved, but a lot of new problems came up, which meant the balance lied somewhere in between. If you think about balance, and if you think about what's really important to all these people, what we see is that if we stand up for our values, the world starts to change. So what I did was I took all the values and I put them together and I overlapped them in a diagram that I call the hearts of value. So you can see the 4 groups over here, and you can see how the values they have overlap. What you see at the center is caring and empathy, being in somebody else's shoes. That was the most important thing. Aside from the kids, inclusion was really important. Perhaps for the kids, it wasn't there because at the end of the day, at their age, they don't know what it's like to be excluded. And it was brilliant to see the commonalities between male millennials and professional women. When I started this journey and I looked at this idea of balance, it freaked me out because I thought we were all so different. But actually, we're not, and we can see that clearly here. So where do we go from here? Well, clearly the balance sheet isn't doing it. Clearly the balance sheet isn't measuring what we really feel is important. Somewhere across our journey of life, we've forgotten to value, prioritize, and measure what really is important to us. Is it because we don't think that we can measure these things? I want to tell you there's an organization called the International Accounting Standards Board who has worked out how to measure the quality of footballers, oil reserves, share options, research, development, and anything because industry has put pressure on it. So how do we think that we can't measure these things? Is it that these values aren't important to us? They are important to us. Remember your value from right at the beginning. So I ask you all at this moment to start unraveling, to start unbalancing, to start turning society's norms on their head. Because if you do, if you really focus on what you value, perhaps together with our shared values, we can recreate a world that doesn't just work for some of us, it works for all of us. Thank you.